The current home of ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, has been widely described as hell on earth. As a former federal prosecutor in New York, I've been inside the MDC many times, and I can tell you that's true. Recent or current high-profile inmates at the MDC include Sean Diddy Combs, Ghislaine Maxwell, Luigi Mangione, R. Kelly, and former crypto mogul Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, Nicolas Maduro, who just days ago lived in a presidential palace in Venezuela, is being held in one of the most notorious federal prisons in the United States ahead of his trial. The MDC is a massive building on the western edge of Brooklyn, just off the East River within sight of the Statue of Liberty. The MDC is currently the only federal correctional facility in all of New York City, and it has a history of overcrowding. It currently houses about 1,300 federal inmates. The facility is notorious for brutal conditions: poor sanitation, frequent power outages and losses of heat in winter, inadequate medical services. 2 inmates were killed at the MDC in 2024. And in March 2025, DOJ charged MDC inmates and a prison guard with acts of violence and with running a contraband smuggling operation inside the prison. Federal judges have described conditions at the MDC as barbaric and contemptuous of human dignity. Some judges have refused to send people to the MDC, granting bail or reduced sentences because of conditions at the facility. A Bureau of Prisons spokesperson told CNN in 2024 that BOP had taken steps to increase staffing and to address hundreds of outstanding maintenance issues that had not been resolved. The official said that Bureau of Prisons would continue to work to improve conditions at the prison.
You might have expected President Trump to monitor that high-stakes capture of Venezuela President Maduro from the Oval Office or the Situation Room, but he was actually in Florida in a makeshift space at his Mar-a-Lago club, transformed into a war room covered with black drape and fitted with secure internet lines, a sophisticated phone system, and several monitors, including a live feed of posts from the social media platform X. Then hours later, Trump addressed the nation from the Mar-a-Lago Tea Room. That's a room with an elaborate tinted ceiling and a 3-tiered crystal chandelier where he fielded questions from reporters and announced that the U.S. would run Venezuela. Meanwhile, Mar-a-Lago guests were arriving at the club as usual. They were dressed in their tennis whites, driving BMWs and Tesla Cybertrucks with security, seated under those yellow and white umbrellas at the beach club and taking in views of the Atlantic. That evening, Trump greeted club members dining on the crowded, glitzy patio, and they cheered his momentous mission. Now, the setup for this operation was constructed in a discreet area of the club away from those guests, according to one person familiar with the matter. But it's not the first time there's been potential intersection between club members and sensitive national security issues. Trump huddled with then Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the patio after a North Korean missile launch. The two discussed how to respond as guests posted photos on social media. And since then, the president and his team have enacted tighter rules for guests snapping photos. The club is fortified with snipers, bomb-sniffing dogs, and boats patrolling the intracoastal waterway.
Secretaria General de mi corazón.
One of Nicolas Maduro's many moments of praise for his wife Cilia Flores, who was always by the Venezuelan president's side. But don't be fooled by her soft manner. For years, Flores has wielded power behind the scenes as a shrewd political strategist. In fact, instead of First Lady, she likes to go by First Combatant, a title that speaks volumes about her lifelong belief in Chavismo, the socialist movement that has dominated Venezuela for decades. As a lawyer, she helped secure Hugo Chávez's release from prison after his failed coup attempt in the 90s. That's when she first crossed paths with Maduro, a moment she recalled on her husband's podcast.
Cuando un muchacho pide la palabra, ¿no? Y habló y yo me le quedé mirando. Y es verdad, yo dije, oye, qué inteligente.
Chávez later became president, as well as Maduro's mentor and predecessor. All the while, Flores was busy carving her own political path. In 2006, she became the first woman to preside over Venezuela's National Assembly. She was criticised for banning journalists from the legislative chamber and for hiring dozens of relatives as employees. Moves she defended. In 2012, Chavez appointed Flores as the country's Solicitor General, not long before he died. 1 year later, she tied the knot with then-President Maduro.
Cilia y yo legalizamos por las leyes de la República lo que ya existía.
All of this has earned her the description of the most powerful woman in Venezuela. That power and influence haven't gone unnoticed. In 2018, the first Trump administration slapped sanctions on the First Lady and others, alleging they were helping the Venezuelan leader plunder his nation's wealth.
Si ustedes quieren atacarme, atácanme a mí, pero no se metan con Cilia, no se metan con la familia.
But the Trump administration disagreed. And when it took the extraordinary step of seizing the Venezuelan president from his bedroom over the weekend, it made sure to get Flores too. Isa Suarez, CNN, London.
I just got out of court here in New York where Nicolas Maduro just pleaded not guilty along with his wife to the charges that they face as protesters have been out here throughout. Now, one of the more interesting things that happened during the hearing came simply when the judge asked him to confirm his identity, where he simply could have just said, yes, I'm Nicolas Maduro. He launched into saying that he is the constitutional president of Venezuela, that he is essentially being treated as a prisoner of war, that he's been kidnapped, taken from his home in Caracas, when the judge jumped in and said, okay, we'll get to that later. For now, we just needed to know your name. His wife was there as well. I mentioned she pleaded not guilty. Both of them were speaking in Spanish as the rest of the court listened through interpretation. His wife did seem to be battling some injuries, some visible injuries on her face, and it was something that her defense acknowledged over the course of the hearing. And then as the hearing wrapped up, a protester stood up in the hearing and essentially yelled at Maduro, "You will pay for what you have done." And Maduro turned around and acknowledging that person, saying, essentially, "I am a man of God." And that was how the hearing ended.
So what do we know about how President Trump actually wants to run Venezuela? So with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in custody in New York, US officials are telling CNN Trump wants to prioritize stability and oil infrastructure ahead of a turn to democracy. So who's in charge? Well, US officials are focusing on the country's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. She's also the finance and oil minister and has been a prominent figure in Venezuelan politics, criticizing Maduro's capture. But behind the scenes, US officials are confident she can provide stability and is someone they can work with. Rodriguez has since appeared to soften her tone too, calling for cooperation with the US and, quote, balanced and respectful international relations. As for how Trump plans to run Venezuela's aging oil infrastructure, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum and Secretary of Energy Chris Wright have been tasked with convincing American energy companies to return to the country. But the gutted infrastructure will be expensive to rebuild and could be a hard sell for the US oil giants. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that discussing a timeline for elections in Venezuela was premature. A swift return to democracy therefore seems unlikely, possibly leaving Maduro's cronies at the actual levers of Venezuela's power.